Hello everyone and welcome to another News Coolum video. And what do I want to say about this? So Tesla just released in their blog an announcement that, and I actually downloaded all of the documentation, but that they were opening up their Tesla standard. They're calling it the NACS, the North American Charging Standard. It was now publicly available. Anybody could use it. Here are the schematics. Here are the diagrams. See, we told you so, basically, is part of it. But if you look into the language of that blog post, it's a little bit disconcerting. Because what it is implying is, or what they're almost asking for, is the ability to cash in on public funds that are earmarked for public charging providers without ever opening their superchargers. And that seems a little bit suspect to me. And I'm not very happy about it because I could see American legislators fall for that. Because Europe was smart. They said, no, you got to use our CCS2 standard. Tesla had to comply. Tesla wanted to cash in on incentives earmarked for public charging providers because they were offering public charging with their CCS2 connector. The problem is only Tesla EVs could use their superchargers. And Europe cracked down on them and said, no, you don't get to call yourself a public charging provider if you are picking and choosing which electric cars you support, regardless of whether you're using the same standard. So then Tesla begrudgingly had to open their superchargers to non-Tesla EVs in Europe without, mind you, being able to demand the intellectual property or customer data from those other automakers, right? So they didn't get to nose into those other automakers in terms of their hardware, their construction, how their vehicles worked, any of that. They didn't get to do that in Europe, which is something that they were demanding of automakers in North America if they wanted to use Tesla's standard. This was previous, right? When they unlocked it and opened the patents for anybody who wanted to and had an open invitation and were, crying because no automakers took them up on the deal, which basically required those automakers to give Tesla everything, including funding superchargers. And so, Tesla has not been on the up and up in how they've communicated this. Now, they have a lot of influencers out there talking about how, magnanimous Tesla is, and are I not merciful, as Elon looks down on the Coliseum and sticks his thumb down. No, so, the thing is, this is not a good thing, right? So you have, I'm here at an EVgo charger. EVgo is one of those networks that's like, look, we want to be profitable. And per that article, something like 60% of the EVs on the road in North America are currently Teslas using that Tesla standard. And EVgo knows this, and EVgo says, we want to be profitable. We want to do whatever we can do to win over as big of a market share as we can win over, because we want to do this public charging for profit, as a profitable enterprise. So they went and bought Tesla adapters, the CHAdeMO adapters, and started putting them on their 50 kilowatt chargers and their 100 kilowatt split power chargers. So Tesla owners don't even need to carry around that big honking CHAdeMO adapter. They just pull in and they can use the built-in adapter at the EVgo charger. So EVgo has been bending over backwards to basically work with Tesla owners to give them what they need to use the network as an open public network should. Now, this Tesla standard that's been released, here's our NACS certified cable. Now, presumably they want EVgo to start buying these cables and installing them on their chargers. I don't know whether they work. right? There's questions about safety protocols, locking mechanism. There's a whole lot of back-end work that charging providers like EVgo are going to have to do in order to integrate those cables. But EVgo is a company that's very likely to want to do that, right? But is a liquid-cooled system that Tesla is using for their V3 supercharger cables the same as the liquid-cooled system that Delta is using in their chargers, or BTC Power, or whatever? We don't know if those specs are working together. So this might just be a gesture, like I said, to then be able to go to U.S. lawmakers and say, give us all that federal funding, because, look, we put the standard out there, and if other automakers didn't adopt it, well, that's their fault. We're still a public charging provider, whether they like it or not. And if I went and I 3D printed and created that Tesla adapter and used their standard and integrated it on my Bolt EV, on my Ford Ranger electric, I could drive to a Tesla supercharger and it would physically plug in, but I don't know that I could charge there. Now, people are saying, oh, you just get the Tesla app and you can automatically start it. But that's not clear, right? Tesla has never communicated that they're willing to open their superchargers to anybody other than an automaker that installs this on their cars and then works with Tesla, possibly still demanding those same things that I mentioned before about those automakers releasing IP, customer information, internal, corporate sensitive information that's not supposed to be released outside of their company. Those types of things, that demand might still be on the table on the back end. We don't know. And to get beyond even just this, and I know this is a bit of a rant, and so it's not really scripted, but these are some concerns that I've been having about Tesla this whole time, because remember, they could have always opened their superchargers. New York is one of the few areas in North America that required Tesla to open their superchargers to non-Tesla EVs in order to continue really receiving public funding that was earmarked for, and public incentives that were earmarked for public charging providers. And so what did Tesla do? They installed a single 50 kilowatt charge point at each one of those supercharger sites and said, look, see, we're a public charging provider now. So they just put a single 50 kilowatt charger in a single stall next to 10, 15, 20 plus supercharger stalls. And then they have the audacity to say, see, we spent $30,000, threw a bone to everybody else, now give us all that public funding again. And I have no reason to think that they're going to change with this. Why would they? Tesla is looking for that funding and looking to be able to do as little as possible, it appears, in order to qualify for those funds. And yes, maybe 60% of the cars on the road right now are Teslas, but that number is not sustainable. You have automakers like Ford, GM, VW, Hyundai, Kia, all of these others that are just ramping production. All of them are going to have multiple 100,000 plus unit per year EV offerings by mid-decade. Tesla is going to be lucky to be representing 20% of the driving EV market, EV licensed on the road driving market, right? Their market share is going to dwindle to basically barely 2 digits in North America. So for them to say, oh, we should be the de facto standard because we represent a majority of EV drivers, they have to make that argument now, because that argument isn't going to stand this test of time unless they can get other automakers to also adopt their standard, which, again, it's not even clear that that's going to be the case. And then the other really big problem that I have with it is, even though they want to put it out there as a public standard, it is still a proprietary, internally produced charging standard that no one else has access to. So CHAdeMO, CCS, they were developed by organizations that are not directly affiliated with any one automaker, like the Society of Automotive Engineers. And so you have everybody at the table with a bit of input and a bit of feedback, and they can actually make assertions about the standard, whereas this NACS, who was it? It was Elon at a table with his engineers and saying, this is what we're going to do, and everybody is going to do exactly what we want. And right now, Tesla is the only electric vehicle automaker that I know of that uses an onboard charger that takes in both AC and DC current and uses contactors to split it. So if it's AC, it goes through the onboard charger and gets converted to DC. And if it's DC, it gets directed through the contactors directly to the battery. Well, now all of these automakers, what are they going to have to either develop similar methods, or are they going to have to buy Tesla's hardware, right? Is this basically Tesla trying to become the company store and the gatekeepers to essentially their standard, which is not their standards, it's public standard? No, it's completely, ridiculous. And then, of course, the other problem I have with it is, who has certified this standard? So I know that they're UL listed. You go and you see the placard and it has the UL, CE, all of that on the placard. But then you look at the actual output power, and what they're outputting exceeds the rated power on their placards. So you look at their rating and see a 600 amp rating or whatever on their V3 Supercharger placard, yet they have to be exceeding 700 amps of current through those itty-bitty cables. And it's never been clear, is it the cars themselves that are limited to 250 kilowatt, or is the cable only able to do 250 kilowatt for 10 to 15 minutes before it overheats because they're pushing so much current through such a tiny cable that it's just not sustainable even with cooling? Because these standards are put in place for a reason. They're safety standards that are put in place for a reason. And my discussions with EVgo at Fully Charged Live, safety is one of their number one concerns. And so you could see V3 Tesla cables on a 350 kilowatt EVgo charger, and they might be limited to 500 amps or they might be limited to less than that if they look at the wiring diameter and they see, oh, wow, they're wanting me to run 700, 750, 800 amps through a 0-aught or a 2-aught wire, right? No, we're not going to be doing that. I'm just saying this right now because I see a lot of people cheering this on, saying this is a great thing, this is a boon, and I think they might be missing the point that this could actually be terrible news. And it could be terrible news if the reason for Tesla's doing it is to not have to open up their superchargers in order to gain access to public charging funds. So if that's the case, I think that's a real problem. And I think we shouldn't just let them get away with it, right? Like, in my opinion, it's not right to be taking public funds unless you are ready, willing, and able to serve any EV that can reasonably use that standard. And like I said, I could go download their schematics, and I could 3D print out a Tesla charge port, and I could install it in my Ford Ranger electric, and I could roll up to a Tesla supercharger and still be denied access. That's a problem. So until Tesla, in combination with this NACS announcement, guarantees that anybody who actually implements their standard in their vehicles will be able to gain access to the superchargers without having to release IP, CSI, personal information, customer information, outside of the basic billing information that's required for any payment, like an app, until they provide that assurance in writing that we are going to see basically every non-Tesla EV currently coming to market able to access and use their chargers, then they shouldn't be given public funds as a public charging provider, because that's not what they are. So I'd love to hear what you think. I mean, maybe I'm being too harsh based on historical precedent and what I've seen Tesla do so far. Maybe I should reserve judgment and allow Tesla to change what they've done up to this point and do the right thing. But like I said, without them doing something first, I don't trust their motives. I think this is a play to gain access to public funds without providing a public service. And I think that's about as sad of a thing as I can think of at this point. So yeah, I mean, it's a great plug, but I want to see it, UL certified. I want to see outside agencies like the, Society of Automotive Engineers be able to look at it, dissect it, do a safety review, give their input onto the standard, not necessarily have the power to change it, but if you want it to be a public standard, it needs to be a public standard, not a Tesla standard that the public can use. There's a subtle but very important distinction there. So I hope you found this interesting. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. I have clearly very mixed feelings based on a lack of trust of Tesla and Elon Musk over the years. So I'd love to hear what you think. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel, and thank you for watching.